Hi everyone. So I'm Hannah on the Heart Centre Visionaries YouTube channel from Hannah Marie Coaching. And I'm super excited because I'm starting a series connecting and talking to women that are highly sensitive in business. And I think it's just such an important topic that we need to get out there, something that we need to raise awareness of so that we can be more empowered in ourselves and in our businesses. So I've got the beautiful Sarah Brown here today. So hi, Sarah, how are you doing?
Hi, Hannah. Thank you so much for excuse me, for extending the invitation. As you can hear, my throat isn't too good because it's so hot here where I live.
Yeah.
So I'm having to hydrate myself a lot more than normal.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It's absolutely crazy.
I know, we're just not equipped for it in this world, or in Europe anyway.
No.
So just to introduce Sarah a little bit, and then we'll kind of dive into it. So Sarah is a speaker, coach, and teacher. And honestly, I connected so well with Sarah. I think it was online networking that we met in a beautiful networking group for empathetic women. So there was straight away that link of being sort of connected to our sensitivity and just, those women that are very heart-centered. And so for a little intro, you can add to this, but Sarah really helps sensitive emotional women get to the root of what is stopping them move forward. So tell us a little bit more about your work, Sarah, and how you help women sort of move forward in their lives.
That was lovely to remind me of how we met, because I remember online networking was a bit of do I really want to do this? Because as you know, as a sensitive empathic woman, it can be pretty tough. And I think you were in one of the first groups I joined, and I was just like, there's another lady out there like me, sort of thing. That's how I felt. That's really how I felt. And I absolutely love the deep connection that we've already created together.
Absolutely.
And I did want to thank you because you have been part of my journey in the sense that I've totally reinvented myself since we first met. And I actually feel that that's going to be an ongoing process anyway. But just as I said, seeing you out there as well and being your authentic self, that really helped me to step into more of my authenticity, at least. So what I am helping people, well, women, especially women, to do is sensitive, emotional women who have a toxic relationship. Now, this can be with themselves, because a lot of us do actually find it difficult to accept who we are anyway. But it can also come from our mothers. And I am speaking on a personal level here. So I've been through a lot of life-changing situations over the past 12, 18 months. And all of this actually brought me to my purpose now, today, which feels totally aligned.
Wow.
With who I am.
That's so beautiful. In fact, I just want to say thank you for those kind words, because I think it's so lovely to know that other people are out there being authentic. And I've seen you transform, like you say, almost like this, that journey of being the caterpillar in the cocoon and like sort of even letting yourself unfold even more. And I think that's really amazing that you're using the challenges you've experienced to teach people. So I'd love to hear, I know this is such a big topic, but you saying about, being empathetic and sensitive, how does that connect in with those relationships that people have, like those toxic relationships? Do you see a link with the sensitivity piece and how they maybe experience toxic relationships?
Well, first of all, I didn't even know that the relationship I had with my mum was toxic until I was in my late 30s, early 40s. So, that's a long time to live in such a relationship and not realize what it is. And now with everything that I've done, I totally believe that the sensitivity and the empathy is linked to that, simply because for most of my life, I was told that I was too sensitive, too emotional. The underlying message was to just get over it, sort of thing. And so I really thought that there was something fundamentally wrong with me for so many years. And this led me to being extremely unhappy in my life in general, as a person, as a mother, as a wife. And I just put on so many masks to try and pretend to be somebody who I really wasn't inside, and it absolutely crushed me.
Wow, I'm getting goosebumps. Like I just have to say that I feel like you've said some really key things there, is that idea that as sensitive women, and again, we were talking about this before, I don't want to like label ourselves as highly sensitive, but I think there's an awareness piece. And like you said, being called too sensitive or too emotional, it does stick with us. And it's almost like we see it as a negative, right? And then we shut down our sensitivity because it doesn't feel safe to be in it. And like you said about the mask, I think that's so interesting, because I think we kind of put on the shell, I imagine like a crab with its shell putting up its walls to protect itself. So I'd love to hear a bit more about like the masks you say about. How do you feel you've put those masks on, like as well in your business, to kind of protect yourself in some way?
Yeah, well, this is what I'd done up until very, very recently. I mean, once I first realized that the relationship was toxic, this is going back a good 10 years now. And it actually coincided with what could have been a life-threatening health problem. So it all links in. I mean, I love it when you sort of get all the pieces of the puzzle and when you can actually put them all together. But at the time, I didn't realize that. But so that was like a massive shock, as you can imagine, just to really understand what had been going on for all of my life up until then. And in fact, what really helped me was to start taking off those masks, but little by little. And this year has actually been like a pivotal year, because they've all come off now. They've absolutely all come off now, which is helping me to really show up as the person that I am. And in a way, it's sort of, love me or don't love me sort of thing. And that's okay now. Whereas before, I was so scared of not being loved.
Absolutely.
And a big part of that is actually learning to love yourself. And that's part of the journey that I take these sensitive, emotional women on, because it's sort of like I've identified as well, there are 4 steps to the process that I take them through. There's like shifting their past narrative, whatever that is, and then overcoming the pain, awakening to their truth, because I've realized as well, there isn't one truth. We all have our own truth, whatever that is. And if you want, we can maybe talk a little bit more about that. And then the last sort of step, once they've gone through all of that, is then for them to be able to rise as the leader of their own lives, whatever that looks like to them.
Wow, that's so powerful. Like, I love that, like that acceptance, particularly for sensitive women as we are. I mean, I think being highly sensitive plays out in lots of different ways. But once you understand what it is in yourself and you give yourself permission to be you, like you said, you remove the masks, then we give other people permission to be seen in their sensitivity, right? Because I feel that's like a really vulnerable place to be in. It's not easy. And so I'd love to hear more about like because you're saying about these masks, what do you think maybe, well, first of all, how to go backwards, how did you find out that you actually would say that you were like highly sensitive? Was there, I guess, a series of experiences that sort of led you to learn that about yourself?
Yeah, I've always been able to feel people's emotions without realizing it. Now I know what it is, but when you're a little girl, you have no idea. But like crying when people were upset or in pain, that it wasn't actually directed at me. Or on the other hand, when people were really having a great time, I would just like be totally euphoric. And it was, to be honest, probably quite difficult to balance all of that. And I don't actually think now that we need to balance it, right? But it was just all of this growing up. And I also had quite a few sort of invisible experiences as a child, which also, once I started to just talk to my mum about them, I can't remember what she said, but the impression that I still have now is that you mustn't talk about that, right? You mustn't talk about that. like I had what I now know to be a near-death experience when I was 8.
Oh,
I
wow.
had an out-of-body experience when I was, I don't know, 16, 17, sort of teenage years. And for the past couple of years, my clair, what's the word? When you can hear people, I think it's clair auditory, isn't it?
Clear audience,
Yeah.
yeah.
Clair audience, that's really, really coming in, which is great now because I can also bring that into my coaching and my teaching with people, because sometimes I'm with somebody and I hear a message for them, which makes no sense to me. So I just I pass the message on. So, but I realize now that I obviously had all of this as a child anyway, but because I didn't know what it was, and also thought it was normal, because it is normal, but was taught it wasn't to be talked about. I was just like, oh my God, so what's all that about, right? So
yeah, absolutely. Wow, that's so beautiful that you then use that in your coaching with women. Like you say, you hear that clear audience, because I think it is, again, it's that acceptance. When you understand you're sensitive, people can say, oh, labels aren't good, and I agree, we don't want to get too fenced in, but also it I think for highly sensitive women, we have so many intuitive abilities that when we're open to them, things open up, like you said, with that Claire audience, which is beautiful. And that can be like one of your, that can be like your compass in business of how you lead people down the path. And we need more people like you. That's why I'm doing this series. So it's so beautiful to hear that.
thank you.
It's just, yeah, it's amazing. So with that kind of, knowing you were you didn't know you were sensitive when you were younger, and then you sort of your abilities have been opening up. What would you say are like, what would you say, because there are obviously superpowers, there are also challenges to being highly sensitive. What would you say were like, one of the biggest challenges that you've struggled with in your business of being highly sensitive?
It was when I first set up in business, and I think this is true for anybody, whether or not we're sensitive. I used to take on work from anywhere. So from any source and from any person. And even if my intuition, and you touched on that earlier, didn't you? The intuitive side of us as well. Even if my intuition was telling me, or even screaming sometimes, don't do it, don't do it. And all I was thinking of was the money. I need the money, so I'm going to take that contract. And most of the time, if not all of the time, my intuition was right. But then that really tripped me up and actually led to some rather less than positive feedback, let's say, about what I was doing. I haven't always been a coach. I'm also a teacher, as you said, and I did do some translation work before as well. So there were 3 different sort of like fields to my business at the time. But anyway, so that is one lesson that I've learned in a way the hard way. So if you're listening to this, the first thing I would say is just respect your intuition, even if it makes no sense. Even if you're thinking, I need the money, I know what that feels like. But now, if it doesn't feel right to me, if my intuition is saying, don't take that client or don't take that job, then I listen to that. And something better always shows up, sometimes even the same day. So
yeah. I love that. I'm laughing because I've totally done that too. And I think it is literally when your intuition is screaming at you. And to me, I'd say being highly sensitive, we should be really connected to our intuition, but obviously because of all the mask and conditionings, we're sometimes not connected to it.
Yeah.
So I love that you say, learn from that, listen to it, because it will keep screaming at you. I know that for sure. You just you have to laugh at it sometimes when you don't, because you learn the hard way, don't you? So, so would you say that your intuition, that feeling is something that guides you in business now?
Yes, it actually, it really, really kicked in 20 years ago. I was thinking about this just before we started chatting. It's mid-July 2022. And 20 years ago, July 2000, I was really faced with, let's say, a very, very difficult decision to make, which was, do I listen to myself and my intuition? I was pregnant with my 3rd child at the time. This is why it's very important. Or do I listen to all of the doctors and the medical specialists and family and friends who were telling me to do something in relation to my pregnancy that I had no intention and no desire to do? And that was like the first time that I was really faced with such a massive decision related to my intuition.
Wow.
So I went against everybody and listened to myself. And thank you for that guidance. And that was actually the first time that the clairaudience kicked in as well, because I remember I was just so devastated with the medical diagnosis, which actually was wrong, but I didn't know that till I gave birth.
Wow.
So there's all of that going on with the pregnancy. But I just sat in the garden at the time, just sobbing. And I said, if there's somebody or something out there, just help me. And I immediately heard the message, just trust. And I'm going all goosebumpy now.
Yeah, so
every time I tell this story, I just go so goosebumpy. And I heard this beautiful, soft, calming voice. Excuse me, I don't know who it was. And it doesn't matter who it is, I don't think. But just saying, just trust. Everything will be okay if you just trust in yourself and what you're feeling. And I was just like, oh my goodness. So that, Hannah, like 20 years ago, that has really, really helped me.
That's incredible. Like I'm getting goosebumps as well, because it's funny, I was just going to come on to this idea of trusting ourselves, and you've said it. So yeah, you have to, when your intuition is talking to you, like you got that so powerfully, you don't always know what is the how. And I think that's hard for us humans. Yeah. But it's that feeling, isn't it? It's from your heart space. It's not from your head. It's something, it's almost a knowing in that sense. Like you knew what to do. Your body was telling you what was right for you. Yeah. And so we have to almost unlearn all those things. And particularly as highly sensitive people, I mean, like you said before, we're aware of other people's emotions. And that can kind of feel confusing, because we're like, oh, is that mine or is it somebody else's? Yeah. And I think that's something that we need to learn as well, is what is ours and what is theirs. And so that's a thing that I find with clients as well, and people that are highly sensitive, is we kind of struggle with boundaries.
For sure.
Right? So I'm curious to hear have you got any insights on boundaries, or how you've created healthy boundaries for yourself in the work you do?
Yeah, well, same as you've just said, right? When I first started coaching, it was just like the floodgates were open. Yeah, bring it on. Everything that was going on in the other person's life, it was just like, oh my God. So I quickly realized that I really needed to do some work on myself. So I realize now that and often I find, I think you may find the same, but often the client will mirror something that we're either going through or that we've already gone through as well. So I just sort of make a mental note of that. And that helps me now to not be triggered by anything during coaching, and to, in a way, sort of like, bring in this invisible boundary as soon as I feel, oh my goodness, this could be me, or the actual words that the person says are the words that I would say or have already said. Now, because I've sort of, really identified that is, what's the word? Not an alarm at all, but it's more just like a button, I suppose, being pressed to have this like invisible boundary, if that makes sense.
Yes. Wow. I love, do you know, you put it in, I've definitely learned something from that. I love that idea of just knowing, like telling yourself, I've put this invisible bubble in. I think it's so important. And yeah, we want to hold that safe space for people. And if we're overwhelmed by their stuff, we can't really function very well.
No. There was one time where I felt totally overwhelmed. And just because of the relationship I built up with that particular woman, I was actually able also just to say to her, I'm really sorry, but what you have just said echoes so much of my story. Because I also felt that she needed to hear that, because she was really not in a happy state at the time. And obviously without making it all about me, because that's definitely not what it's about. But I felt that the space, like you've just said, we do hold this space, and it can be trying sometimes for us. But I just felt that at that particular time, the space that I was holding for her needed that to come through as well.
Absolutely. That's really powerful. I think that, again, that mirroring, but that awareness piece.
Yeah.
And, you know, as a, what I found myself as well is being sensitive, is our environment's also really important, right? Because I think this is a topic, and I've spoken about this before. I've had like 25 jobs in my life, and I've left a lot of jobs because the environment's been overwhelming to me. And I have a joke with somebody about, I can't stand bright lights because it's being sensitive, it's almost too much, you know, like I get headaches. So there's that element of we've sort of talked about the, you know, the emotional, the inner health, but it's also our physical environments. And what I found is being in nature is really good for highly sensitive women.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. One thing I recommend, even if you are sort of new to this journey or this discovery of who you really are, is just to go outside barefoot if you have the chance, you know, if you're lucky enough to have a garden, or it doesn't necessarily have to be even a garden, but grass is brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you just have a space where you can just go outside barefoot and connect, even if it's just on soil, and don't think, oh, my feet will be dirty, because they get washed, right? You can wash your feet. But yeah, just going outside barefoot, apart from anything else.
Yeah,
that helps, doesn't it, to really ground you and connect you.
That's a really good tip. Because I love practical tips, are there any other you know, self-care practices that you can share that might help other women that are highly sensitive and feeling a bit like just a bit drained or a bit overwhelmed by being in business?
Yeah, for sure. A couple of things that I've really brought in because they spoke to me apart from anything else. And again, a lot of people were saying, well, you can't do that in business. And I've got past that now. But a couple of things are recognizing my energy levels. And a lot of that is related to the moon cycles. And this is a totally other subject, you know, a new subject that we could talk about, because I know your love and passion for all of that as well. But I'm really concentrating how I show up in my business in relation to the moon cycles. So there are times in that cycle where it's time to celebrate, it's time to be out there, to get our business message out there, which is actually right now.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
And
then there are times, exactly, and then there are times leading up to the new moon, for example, where the 4 days leading up to new moon, so you can just look that up whenever that is, are times for self-care. And I had to really, I struggled with it. I was going to say put my foot down. It wasn't necessarily that, but I have a male dominant household. I'm married and I have 3 boys, well, they're now men. So it used to be very, very difficult for me to even show up as a woman, which might seem a bit strange, but I have learned how to do that over the years. And so before, I felt that self-care was being selfish because I wasn't wanting to be available for them, but I wasn't respecting my feminine energy and my feminine side at all. So in a way, whether or not they like it, and to be honest, they haven't really noticed a difference, but I have. I take those 3-4 days to just be with me. And that can be different things at different times. So it can be me just sitting and journaling, meditating, doing oracle cards, because that's what I love to do. Or it can be me actually connecting to other people, because self-care can also be just spending time with people you love and who love you back.
Absolutely.
It can also be going out for the day, getting out in nature, as you've just said. So there are so many different things, but the first key is to just identify what fills your cup up. And listen to nobody else. Just listen to yourself.
That's such a good point. Listen to yourself. I love that. And on the piece of the moon cycles, I love that you're aware of them and you work with them, because, you know, I teach clients about that, and that's been a journey for me, because if we are sensitive, we're probably more in tune with the moon. And it's funny you say about the 3 days before new moon, because I love that time. Like, I feel like it's you know, going really inwards, and you actually get all this rich inspiration and wisdom come out of that, the dark moon. Actually, I found out I was born at the dark moon, so that's why I like that time.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
It's
Love
my
it.
moon phase. So also that's
Hey.
another tip for women, is if you actually know when you're what moon phase you're born under, then you can kind of work with that energy as your time to really dive in deeper to your intuition, and you're going to get so much wisdom and ideas come out of that time. But without going off on a tangent, that's something else to explore.
That's wonderful. I didn't know that. Yeah. Okay.
It's really, really enlightening. But as you said, I love that you use that, the moon cycles as a tool for your self-care. And I would recommend anyone kind of start doing that. Even if women out there, you just get a moon diary, or you just write down when the full new moon is. Just start there, because it's start simple, don't complicate it.
Exactly. That's how I started, because there were times of the month where I just didn't sleep at all, but I was full on. Mine is, maybe I was born around the full moon, because full moon, I'm just like, full on. And I was like, be awake at 2 or 3 in the morning, only having had 2 or 3 hours sleep, but thinking, oh my God, this is brilliant. And again, thinking there was something strange about that. And then there are other times of the month where I could sleep for 7-8 hours and still be tired.
Yeah.
So it's also that, isn't it? It's like you said, even if you just start with identifying when is new moon, when is full moon, and how, I would maybe add to that, how is my energy? How do I feel around the new and full moons? And just take that.
Do you know, I love that. Sorry for cutting you off. The when you said about energy levels, because that's something I've really learned this year from a mentor I've worked with, is what is my energy available for today? Because as you said, nature and giving yourself that time for you. I just want to enhance this point is so important for us highly sensitive people, because the way other people work in business does not work. I've tried it. You were saying before about that's what I feel I should do.
Oh, yes.
It's exhausting, right? If we try and I know for me, 9 to 5 does not work. And it might work for some other sense. I'm not saying it doesn't work if you're highly sensitive, but you've got to find what works for you. And it might be that you work 4 hours in your business and then you have the rest of the day for you. Sometimes it just works like that. And some days you'll have more energy to really be in the zone. But I think it's following your energy, as you said, is such an important point. And stop looking at what everyone else is doing. Use your intuition as your guide, and that feeling within you to know what is right for you, as you said.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've gone around that. You shared so much. I love it. So to sort of leave people, because I think you've shared a lot of wisdom, and I'm sure it will help women out there that are struggling with this. So what if somebody sort of found out they're highly sensitive, or they connect with the word being an empath? What would you say if if they've got a business? What would you say? How can they get in touch with their sort of superpowers within being highly sensitive? Do you have sort of a practice or something, just words of wisdom to help people feel a bit more empowered in themselves?
That's a really good question. And to do it justice, I would probably need at least another hour. But the first thing is to just reconnect, I think, to yourself. Okay. And to dismiss the idea, like you've touched on so many times already, Hannah, that this is a negative trait and that this is something that we need to cover up, and to just lean into it more and more. But sometimes we don't even know that we are empaths and that we are sensitive. So from what we've been saying, if you can identify with any of that, if you are highly intuitive, or because what does that mean? That means I just know. I can't explain it. I just know. So, and I struggled so many years with this because people wanted proof. And when it's like that, you can't prove it, right? So
really?
They don't believe you. So I think to start off on your journey, there are loads of great books as well out there. I'm an avid book reader. There's a book that you may have already read as well, Hannah, about the highly sensitive person.
Yes, yeah, that's a great book.
That's a great book, yeah. So that could be a place to start as well. And then if you are looking for people to help you, I would make sure that when you're doing your Google search, whatever you do, that you actually use the words either sensitive or highly sensitive and empathic in your search, because there are more and more of us actually putting that into our content, aren't there?
Yes.
So make sure that you connect with somebody who shares at least those two values, traits, whatever they are, because I have worked with a lot of different people, and some of them were not sensitive and some of them were not empathic.
Wow, I love that. Such a good tip. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, The Highly Sensitive Person is a great read. Highly recommend that. And yeah, and also I think it's thank you for sharing that, is also to really connect with, even if you don't have a mentor, is connect with other women that are highly sensitive, because we get it, right? And that's why I want to spread awareness, because more and more I keep meeting women that, obviously I'm putting that out there, so I'm attracting more people in that are new to this journey. And I just want you to know you're not alone. That's why we're doing this series. There are loads of women here, and it's all slightly different for each of us as individuals, obviously, but it's that, like you said, it's that knowing, really trusting your knowing and leaning into it, which can take time. So be kind to yourself.
One last thing, listening to you, that's beautiful. I also would recommend that if you are in a group of women and you don't feel like you fit in, then that might not be the right group for you. I know that I can be totally myself with Hannah, whatever's going on in my life, because I personally feel that as sensitive, empathetic women, we are there to support. And that is the main reason why we do what we do. So if you feel anything icky, and you don't necessarily have to be in a group, even with just another woman, let alone another person, then please listen to that as well. And surround yourself with people who just feel like your people. That's all I want to say, because that's so important. And I've been on a long journey to find mine as well.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. That finished it off beautifully. I totally agree, because you can fit. I've had this before. I've been in a group, it's not been quite aligned, and my intuition's been like, oh, you need to leave, and it's been screaming at me and I didn't listen. So that is so important, that you feel safe and you feel seen and heard with the right people. And just being aware that you are highly sensitive, trust me, they'll just come to you.
Exactly.
They'll come to you and be like a magnet.
I was just going to say, like a magnet.
So there we are.
Yes.
So, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, Sarah. I really appreciate it. And being so vulnerable, being yourself, and, being part of this series to empower other women and share that appreciation for our sensitivity. So, yeah, thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Hannah, for that beautiful invitation. I've loved discussing all of this. And as you know, we could talk for hours.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And if you want to connect with Sarah, I will leave all her links in the description so you can connect with her from this video. So thank you so much. And I look forward to more of these conversations with women. Stay tuned.